Hey everyone, welcome back. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who tried the demo. Not a huge number of people tested it, but the people who did gave me very useful feedback, and that really helped me understand what needs to be improved. A special thank you to the people who took the time to write full feedback, explain what felt good, what felt confusing, and what needed more work. And also, one person even made a real video about the demo, so I really want to say thank you for that. Seeing someone actually play the prototype and talk about it was very motivating. This project is still very early, but feedback like that helps a lot. For this update, I did not add a new big map or a new story chapter yet. Instead, I focused on core system. The goal was to make the prototype feel more like a real game. So in this video, I will show the new level up system, the new defense system, better NPC interaction, player death, enemy behavior after the player dies, and finally the new menu. The menu is probably the biggest visual change, so I will keep it for the end of the video. For the first big change is the level up system. Before, the game was using stat points when the player leveled up. They had points to distribute manually. But after testing, I felt this was not really the direction I wanted. For this type of game, I want the level up to feel faster and more automatic, closer to an old action RPG. So now, when the player levels up, the stat increase automatically. The player does not need to open the menu and spend points. The game now shows which stats increased after the level up. For example, HP, EP, strength, power, and endurance can go up. This makes the progression easier to understand and it keeps the game moving. And if you noticed, I also added a sound effect when the level up starts. It's a small detail, but it makes the moment feel more rewarding. The goal is that every level up should feel satisfying, even if the stat gains are small. I also reduced the stat gains compared to before, because they were too high. I want the progression to feel closer to classic games, where sometimes you only gain 1 or 2 points. So, the next important feature is defense. The player can now hold the defense button. When defending, the player stops moving. They cannot attack, they cannot use special attacks, and they stay a guard animation. I wanted defense to feel simple, but not too strong, so the player does not block everything automatically. Direction matters. So let's say we're gonna fight this enemy, I block, but the enemy will go around me and still hits me. I have to face him if I want to defense myself and reduce the damages. But I made that the enemies could go around me to like avoid this kind of behavior. So if the player is facing the enemy, the defense works. The damage is reduced. So if an enemy attacks from the front, the player can block part of the damage. But if the enemy attacks from the side or from behind, the defense breaks. The player takes full damage. This makes positioning more important. You cannot just hold the defense button and be safe forever. You need to face the enemy. For me, this makes the combat more interesting. Even with simple enemies, it gives the player one more decision during battle. I also fixed a problem with NPC interactions. Before, the attack and interaction system could overlap. For example, the player could start an attack and then talk to an NPC, and animation or combat state could continue during the dialogue. That did not feel clean. Now, when the player starts a dialogue, the game cancels the current actions. Attack stops, special attack stops, the player goes back to idle, and the gameplay is locked while the text box is open. This makes conversations feel much more stable. It's not a big, flashy feature, but it's very important for polish. These small fixes are what makes the game feel less like a prototype and more like a real game. Another important system I added is player death. Before, the player could lose HP, but the game did not really have a proper death state. Now, when the HP reaches 0, the player dies. The character stops moving, inputs are blocked, the menu cannot be opened anymore, attacks and special attacks are cancelled, and the player plays a death animation. For now, the game gets stuck, I cannot move, I cannot do anything, but that means I can build a real game over or retry system later. I also changed the enemy behavior after the player dies. Before, enemies could keep attacking the player even after death. That looks strange. Now, when the player dies, enemies stop attacking, they move away a little bit, and then they calm down. It's a small thing, but it makes the scene feel more natural, and they're not attacking a dead body forever. This kind of detail is important because it gives the game more life. Even simple behavior can make the world feel more believable. Now let's talk about the biggest visual change in this update, the menu. I completely reworked the menu system. The status page is now cleaner and it uses a more polished layout. You can see the character portrait, level, HP, EP, XP and the main stats. I also changed the stat bars to match the style better. The goal was to make the menu feel closer to real handle RPG menu. Not perfect yet, but much better than before. I added page navigation too. Now the menu has multiple pages. There is the status page, the inventory page, options page, and the quest page. The inventory and quest page are mostly placeholders for now. I do not want to fully build those systems before I actually need items and quests. But the structure is ready. Later I can add real items, consumables, quests, objectives and story progress. And I also added this little animations when you press the key. And of course, if you play the demo, you can change the volume of the master music and SFX and the key bindings. This is important because even for a prototype, players need to be comfortable with the controls. So this update is mostly about foundations. It may not look like a huge story update, but these systems are very important. Level up, defense, death, NPC interactions, menu navigation, and options are all systems that the game will use again and again. If these systems are solid now, it will be much easier to build a real adventure later. I want the game to grow step by step, not just by adding random content, but by making the core gameplay stronger. Before ending the video, I also want to talk about the direction of the project. Until now, this was mostly a prototype. I was testing movement, combat menu, level up, and basic RPG systems. But now I want to give the project a clearer identity. The legacy of Goku games already tell a lot of Goku's adult story. They cover the Dragon Ball Z area with the Saiyan Saga, Frieza, Cell, and Buu. And I love those games. But young Goku's story has a different feeling. Early Dragon Ball feels more like an adventure. Goku is still a kid, the world is new, there is explorations, training, martial art, funny characters, strange places, and smaller quests. This is the feeling I want to capture. So the goal is not to make only a fighting demo. The goal is to build a small action RPG adventure focused on young Goku. A game where you can explore, train, fight, find items, complete simple quests, and follow moments inspired by the early Dragon Ball story. It is still very early, and I do not want to promise something too big. But this is the direction I want to follow from now. This is it for the update. The prototype is slowly becoming more than just a test. The goal now is to turn it into a real young Goku action RPG adventure. There is still a lot of work to do, but I'm excited about the direction. Thank you again to everyone who tested the demo, gave feedback, or even made content about it. It really helps and it motivates me to keep going. If you enjoyed this devlog, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you want to see next. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.